Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making Afro House drums inspired by Adam Port and Strv song Move. And we're going to find out if we can do this in under 30 minutes by using the 80-20 rule of Afro House drum production. What you're listening to right now is the song we'll be working on. And what you're looking at right now is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on. In particular, we're going to focus on this drum group right here. We're going to go in order of the layers that I actually built them out when reproducing the drums for this, so you can follow along when you're creating drums in this style as well. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video because we'll be doing a full recap of the 80-20 rule, so you can apply what you learned in this video very directly to your own music. Because all in all, these drums only took about 30 minutes for me to recreate by using the techniques you're going to learn in this video. And if we zoom out, which I've been kind of showing here, you can see it's fully arranged, mixed, mastered, and ready to go. So it's good to be used in DJ sets or sent out to labels. And this only took about 5 or 6 hours for me to complete. So finishing songs fast just like this is something that you would like help with. I've made you a free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one song like this every single week. Just visit the link that's on screen now or in the description to grab the ultimate song finishing toolkit for free. And if you want to take things to the next level, you can also find a link to this video's project files in the description as well. With that said, let's jump into this. Alright. So when it comes to the drums for this one, first thing as normal is to make sure you actually have the reference track in here. So I've dropped the Adam Port, etc. song Move in here. I went for the extended version. Always go for that, because what the next step is to follow along and create a little arrangement. So I'll usually use these empty MIDI clips to create a little arrangement markers to figure out what all the sections of the song are. That way, as I'm building it out, I can jump to those sections very easily. And for example, when you're working on the drums, jumping over to the drum intro or the drum outro is usually best. What I'll then do is turn this reference track off and then map the S key on my keyboard to the solo button here. So that way I can flick back and forth to what I have, which is what we're listening to right now, and the reference. Just like that. So then let's actually start building out these drums. So the very first element that I always tend to go for is the kick drum. And pretty much the Afro House vibe for this one, or at least this chill version of this style, everything's very soft and very subtle, and it's a lot of cool little layers that we're going to be adding in here. So first, let's take a look and listen to the kick drum, and then I'll show you how I built it out. So it's just a standard 4-on-4 pattern, the template that I always use, and you can get access to as well if you check out the project files for this. Just the 4-on-the-floor setup so that it's already in those positions, so that way I don't have to actually punch in the 1, 2, 3, 4 for the kick and everything else you're going to see here as well. Once the pattern's figured out, the second thing that I like to figure out is the sound selection. So for the sound selection, I do the trick that I've been doing quite a bit for the last little while, and this is why it's important to get this arrangement track in here. Because what I'll do is find like a section of the intro or the outro where just the drums are playing, so something like this. This is the reference track. Then find a little spot where the kick is playing. And you'll notice there's like kind of audio, like a synth or something playing on top. And I'll show you how to work around that. So once you kind of find a slice where there's as little as possible, just like that kick by itself, Command E on each side. I then dragged that into this rack here. And if I play this, right now it's just the high end. So I'm going to show you a layering trick in a second, but without that, it sounds like this. So a lot more of the kick is coming through, and basically this little rack that I made that you can again get access to in the project files is there's a filter envelope attached to the filter frequency. So instead of just the filter frequency bringing everything down, it does it in a way where it keeps the kick intact and removes some of like maybe the hi-hats or synths or whatever you might have there, and makes it so that kick is a lot more isolated. So you're stealing the kick and isolating it in a nice easy way. Then what I then did after that was consolidated that kick so that it was just an audio file very much like this. And then basically what you can do is use Ableton 12's similar sound functionality to find a similar kick drum from within your one-shot library. So what you do is you click on that sample here, and you go show in browser like this, and it'll show it in here. And then what you can do is press this little button here, and it's going to show you this, as well as a bunch of kicks that sound similar based on like AI or machine learning, whatever the heck it is, that Ableton's using that feature. So then the idea is once you have that, to build out a small little library of that actual kick that you took from the track, and then some similar kicks. And I ended up with this one from Rocket Powered Sound here. So then the idea is once you've built out a little library, you're gonna want to get a little loop going. And I'd be actually looping this in, like, say, the drum intro here. Loop like the drum intro. So we're playing what we have, and flicking back and forth what we have, and the reference track almost musically in time like this, so you can almost hear your kick in the song in a sense. And then what you can do is move the kick up and down, either on the MIDI track here, or if you have this like little rack that I have, you can use this selector to move the value up and down. So it's cycling through the different kicks in that you've made in your little drum rack. That way you can find something similar and jump back and forth. Then the next thing that I did after that I like to do is, if you see in the stolen kick here, I actually have this high pass off, or high pass on, and I'm cutting it around 290 hertz. So I'm getting rid of a lot of like the low end in the body of the kick. That way it's mostly just taking some of that mids and highs, like the character from that kick that we stole, and then I'm layering it and reinforcing it with a one shot. So that's what ends up sounding like this. So without that stolen kick, and then with it, adds a little bit more character and a lot more from the actual song. So this is a cool way that you can use one shots in your library to find something similar to stuff that's actually in the song without fully just taking a stolen kick, which sometimes can sound a little rough because it's, mixed and mastered and all that, and there might be other elements in there. But other than that, not too much in terms of processing, because the main thing is getting your volumes right. So once you have the pattern, and then once you have the right sounds, it is to flick back and forth, really listen to that kick, and try to get the volumes at a similar level. Then, other than that, any little processing I'm doing, I'm adding a little bit of this drum bus, mostly introducing this boom character here, and then I adjusted the frequency so that it just sounded a little bit better to me, brought the damp down so it's removing some of the high, and I adjusted the dry and wet a little bit. So if we listen to it with it, and then without, it's adding some like more of that like subby low end that I feel like really can help fill out the sound a lot, especially when you're working with some of the stolen samples. And then we're shelving out a bunch of the highs, because I think that's kind of a characteristic in this more Afro House style. A lot of stuff is more curved off and mellowed. It's a lot more like subtle and chill. So then the next thing that I usually do is I'll be listening to the reference and use my ear to figure out what I feel like is the next most important element. And for me, what I was hearing was like the shaker. Sorry, let's play it. Because very, very chill. There's no like big open hi-hats like in house music, or like a big clap or snare like in house music. It's a lot more chill. It's like a kick and like just shakers and cool little percussions and stuff. So the next element that I added was this shaker here. And this is just a sick little percussion loop that I've had in my library for the longest time. It kind of has more of like a tribal kind of vibe. And we're just rolling off a little bit of the highs, a little bit of this one knob sidechain, which is just an Ableton shaper device, going to quarter notes, quarter notes is what that kick is playing, and it's just ducking the gain. So that way I don't have to do any kind of annoying compressoring and like adding a compressor and then routing it to the kick and adjusting all those compressor settings. It's just a quick one knob can kind of get a little pumping sound. So it's kind of making room for the kick to come out more, and then also adding a bit of groove as well. But other than that, the main thing was like just flicking back and forth, listening to the shakers, and then trying to get the right volumes. Again, the right sound selection and the right volumes, in addition to having it playing the right thing, is really going to get you that 80% of the way there. The next thing that I added in was this additional shaker. I called it a pan shaker, because I could hear kind of like a little bit of a shaker coming in at the beginning of each little phrase, and kind of like one was playing on the left and then one was playing on the right. So let's listen to the reference first. See if you can hear that. So I added that in like this. This is what it sounds like. And soloed. So what I did was I just found another shaker loop, cut it up a little bit, kind of get that little chicka chicka kind of little vibe, and then just use the panning on the track here. So 35 right and then 43 left. Kind of just did it by eye and then a little bit by ear, and then copied that through the rest of the way. Other than that, nothing much going on here. A little bit of lows. This is the standard channel strip that I have that goes on every audio and MIDI track. This way I can quickly mix as I go. Is again available in the project files. And so that sidechain is then again just doing the same thing we were doing before, making room for the kick, adding a little bit of like that pumping, cool groove and vibe. And then other than that, it's really just getting in the volumes there. The next element that I heard was this little air can thing. So let me play it in mine. So if we hear it in the reference, so it's kind of a little like white noise or something like that. I found this thing called air can that was kind of similar. The only thing is I grabbed it, cut it into the length that I wanted. It's kind of playing on like this part, like ch, 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 like that. And then I did play, I think I played with the pitch in some way. Yeah, so the first one is like at the pitch it was naturally at, and then the following ones are -1. Just a way to kind of like, I don't know if it's necessarily a track, it's something I did a creative liberty there to kind of make it sound a little bit more evolving and changing over time. But other than that, I added a bunch of reverb on my sidechain here, or my my return. So I have the Valhalla vintage verb. Main thing here is I use the reverb calculator to find out this is like I think a half note. So the delay is a half note, so it's musical as opposed to just randomly dialed in. And then the volume really was the main thing there. In terms of any processing, removing a bunch of lows, shoving out a bit of the highs, a little bit of sidechain for pumping. Move on to the next element, which was these kind of subtle toms. So let's have a look and listen. And we'll solo it. And let's solo it with a kick. And then let's solo the reference. So it's similar. I feel like the one in the actual tunes kind of has this rhythm, like do 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 do. So kind of trying to find something like that. I just looked up some like tom loop on Splice and then chopped it up a little bit so that it's kind of doing something similar. So do. So it's similar, not exactly the same, but also usually when I do remakes like this, I want to slowly evolve it over time so it's not a carbon copy, so that I could actually turn it into something that I could release. This one, I have a little bit more lows coming in. Normally I have this channel strip set up to be at cutting off at 200 hertz, and I've dialed it back a little bit and even bumped it up a little bit, trying to get some of that kind of low tomminess working with the kick drum a little bit. We have a little bit of sidechain, so it is pumping, making room for that kick, and then a little bit of this width plugin. So this is a free plugin called Polyverse Wider, really, really cool. I've just mapped the main knobs to this Ableton rack so I can quickly dial things in, pushes things to the left and right, makes things a little bit more stereo, and makes room for stuff in the middle. And that was really it. Main thing was, again, dialing in the volume. The next thing I added in was this kind of percussion-y, it's the closest thing to a snare kind of, or a clap that's in here. So let's have a look and listen. Solo it. So this is, if you listen to the reference, try to have a listen to kind of like almost like the clappy, snarey kind of bit. Very subtle. Everything's really, but it's really cool drum track, I think, to remake on this one, because there's a lot of these subtle elements just working together. We actually just kind of found this cool little bit on Splice, cut it up and chopped it into the areas that I wanted. And then in terms of any processing, just again removing some lows, a bit of the sidechain, a little bit of saturation here to add a little grit to the sound, and a little bit of I guess almost how I've always been describing it as it kind of adds more fullness because it's adding some extra harmonics. And this is just the Ableton Saturator device, again mapped to a one knob device here, so I can just do it with one knob. Don't have to bring it in every time or look at the UI every time. And then that main thing is like dialing in the volumes there. And the last thing is, the next thing I added was this hi-hats. very subtle thing that I think I could hear here. So let's have a listen to it. Let's solo it. In the context. This is something, when I heard I added those 2 shaker layers, and then I was kind of hearing almost something a little bit more down the middle working with the shaker. I assumed it to be this hi-hat. So I added in a hi-hat. It's basically just doing, I want to say these are 32nd notes. No, these are 16th notes. And they're kind of going, first hit's a bit higher in velocity, second one's a bit lower in velocity. And then by pressing and holding, I want to say Option? No. Pressing and holding Command on Mac, you can dial in a bit of randomization on the velocity. And so this way, each hit's changing slightly, and that way there's a little bit more of a humanization feel. So that's one trick there. Other than that, dialing in the volume is really the main thing, and removing a bunch of the lows here, so it's very much just the high end. And using this Kilohertz Transient Shaper, which is another free transient shaper plugin from Kilohertz. What I did again here is map the core knobs to an Ableton rack, so I quickly just dial things in. Very common, especially in drums, to be playing with the transients, either using the attack to adjust that first attack of the transient, or adjusting the sustain, usually dialing it back, in this case example, to tighten up the sound, which I think is really important, and really make things sound a lot more professional when things are sounding tighter, and kind of makes everything kind of work together in a nice way. Then we're doing a little bit of that one knob side chain, and then using this auto pan to just make those hats just move a little bit in the middle, moving center middle kind of thing, a little bit left and right. It's kind of a cool vibe. I don't think that was at all in the reference track. Something cool that I wanted to add in there. Let's see. No open hats. Then I would say, okay, then the next thing I added was in this clap comes in throughout in the second half of the tune. So let me show you what that sounds like over here. All right, let's turn it on first. So it's like do to ka ka. It's kind of the pattern. And if we listen to the reference, so you can hear it there. Not fully the same in terms of the sounds that I picked, but pretty close. Main thing again is getting the right notes there. And then with claps, I usually like to pick 2 different sounds. And then that way what I can do is, say this one here, if we go into the controls, one is panned 41 to the left, and the other one's panned 41 to the right. And then I've just adjusted the volume so that they sound kind of similar in volume. That way it kind of sounds nice and wide and full. Some EQ going on here, rolling off a bunch of the lows, but then I dialed it up a bit to try to make it sound a little bit fuller. I think the clap sounds I've picked weren't as full sounding. A little bit of that transient shaper, removing some of the sustain to again tighten up. That's something I really like to do a lot in claps, make them a lot sound tighter, blend in with the rest of the elements, and then some saturation to add some fullness to the sound, a little bit of grit as well. That's a look at that. Then I feel like this additional shaker comes in, kind of in the back half of the tune here. So let me kind of show you what that sounds like. Adding a lot of high end here. So I'm going to solo it so you can really listen. And then in context. So particularly, this is kind of like almost an arrangement thing. So listen to like the energy slightly shift up between this part and when then the new shaker comes in. There, hopefully you can kind of notice that. It's subtle, and that's one really cool thing about the drums in this track. All these little subtle small things adding up, which is really cool. So I just found another shaker loop that was more of a traditional shaker. That's why I called it a trad shaker. Rolling up a little bit of the highs, a little bit of side chain, but the main thing was dialing in that volume. Then I added in this wood block that I think was a bigger part of the sound that I probably should have added earlier, but it's like this little thing like. So the ta, and then in the reference. So I think the other one sounds almost like maybe there's a layer, maybe there's like a lower layer as well, but I felt like I got pretty close with this. I just found like a wood block sound and splice here, and then I just dropped it in by hand. What's interesting about it in terms of like the arrangement of it, if you can see like, so this is the beginning of the phrase, and then the wood block comes, beginning of the phrase, wood block, beginning of the phrase, wood block. But then slowly over time, so this is the beginning of the phrase, and then the wood block comes more in the middle. The wood block phrase in the middle, and this is more in like the post-chorus. So the verses have it kind of coming in, even this one, like you can see here, it's kind of in the middle of the phrase, in the middle of the phrase. And then over here, once like in the back half of the verse, then it happens at the beginning. So when it sounds in the middle, it sounds like this. Right? And then in the beginning of the phrase, it's like this. So it's interesting. And that just kind of changes all throughout the track. I had to like listen to it and add it in and out and move it around. And sometimes it comes in, I think it like sometimes at the beginning of the chorus, it'll play at the beginning and then not for quite a while. So cool little woodblock thing. Main thing is removing some of the lows, little sidechain for pumping, and then adding in a ton of reverb to get that tap kind of thing. And then other than that, I'm going to show you something real quick. That's really mostly the drums here. But there was like kind of these extra little effects, kind of little fills that I heard. I might put this in another video, but I'll just show them really quickly because there's this. Like that little fill. And this one. Over here. So yeah, I guess I'll show it real quick, but it's just like toms cut up, different like bongos cut up, and then I had an erosion. It almost sounded like there was like a little bit of this like distorted kind of little element to it. A bunch of EQ trying to soften it up and remove some of the lows, some saturation to fill it out, removing a bunch of the sustain to make it really tight and just blend in a lot. But I think this I'll probably cover in another bit because I don't consider it as much drums. It seems more like effects to me. But yeah, that's a good look at the drums for this one. Super cool, really subtle stuff here. A lot of elements working together and a lot of changes happening throughout the track. So definitely check out the project files if you want to get a good deep dive on like all these little micro changes happening to make the song evolve over time. It's really cool stuff. And before we jump into the 80-20 rule, so you can kind of get a recap of really what you want to know when trying to build out your drums like this, especially to a reference track. I want to mention that this video is sponsored by our good friends over at Rocket Powered Sound. They hooked us up with the kick drum that you're hearing in this track, and it's from their Ultimate Sample Pack, which is filled with 1,000 iconic and usable sounds. You can get 30% off by hitting the thing on the screen, the link on the screen, and the link in the description, and using the code that you see there as well to get 30% off. Yeah, so thank you to Rocket Powered Sound for hooking us up. And with that said, let's jump into the 80-20 rule for this one.
Hi, my friend, Matt from Best Friends Club here. And if you've been paying attention, then you probably figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to building out your drums. The goal here is to get 80% of the results with only 20% of the time, energy, or effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule for drums is to use a reference track, we're making sure that we're effortlessly hitting 80% of a very professional sounding track. In particular, we focus on nailing the pattern, sound selection, and the volume compared to the reference track so that we keep things fast and focused as we're building out our drums. The second key of the 80-20 rule here is to mix as you go in an extremely streamlined way by only focusing on the volume as well as a simple repeatable channel strip for each track that we're adding to our drums. The third and final key is to repurpose your old project files and to build up a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one-knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as share tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later And check out this playlist of videos where I remake drums from other songs from the Beatport top charts. Or if you want to take what you learned in this video to the next level, definitely check out this video right here.